Picture this. You're standing in the heart of ancient Alexandria, the air heavy with the scent of incense and the roar of a massive crowd. A royal wedding is unfolding before your eyes. The bride glides down the aisle, her golden silk gown shimmering, flowers woven like stars into her dark hair. The groom stands tall, his purple robes catching the sunlight, radiating power and grace. Thousands cheer from marble balconies, their voices shaking the city. It's a moment so perfect it feels divine. Then the priest speaks, and your jaw drops. The bride and groom are full siblings. Same mother, same father, same blood, same genes. Yeah, you heard that right. Welcome to WTF History, where we're diving into the wild, twisted saga of Egypt's Ptolemaic dynasty. A family that built an empire by marrying their own siblings and then watched it implode under the weight of their choices. This isn't just ancient gossip. It's a masterclass in power, ambition, and the catastrophic cost of keeping it all in the family. By the time we reach Cleopatra, the most famous queen ever, you'll see her not just as a seductress or a genius, but as the product of 250 years of systematic incest that somehow produced one of history's greatest rulers. So grab a drink, hit that subscribe button, and let's unravel how a brilliant idea became a dynasty's curse. We're starting in 323 BCE, in the suffocating heat of Babylon's royal palace. Alexander the Great, the guy who conquered half the known world, has just died at 32. His empire, stretching from Greece to India, is unraveling faster than a cheap tunic. Imagine the scene. The palace is a pressure cooker of grief and greed. Incense burns, mourners wail, and Alexander's generals, his closest buddies, circle his deathbed like starving wolves, each one itching to claim the throne. There's no clear heir, no plan, just a massive, glittering empire up for grabs. Among these power-hungry warlords stands a man named Ptolemy. He's not the loudest or the toughest, but he's definitely the sharpest. While the others squabble over who gets to be the next Alexander, Ptolemy's looking south, his eyes locked on Egypt. Why Egypt? Let's break it down. Egypt wasn't just another chunk of land. It was the ultimate prize. The Sahara Desert wrapped it like a natural fortress, making it nearly impossible to invade. The Nile River was like a money-printing machine, flooding predictably every year to produce enough grain to feed an empire. And then there was Alexandria, the city Alexander founded just before his death, designed to be the center of the world. Ptolemy saw what the others missed. He didn't need the whole empire. He just needed the best part. Egypt was defensible, fertile, and poised to dominate trade across 3 continents. But Ptolemy wasn't content to just rule Egypt. He wanted to own it, body and soul. So he pulled off one of the gutsiest moves in history. He stole Alexander's body. Yeah, you heard me. He hijacked a corpse. Picture this. Alexander's funeral procession is rolling toward Macedonia. A golden coffin gleaming in the sun, escorted by thousands of soldiers. Ptolemy swoops in with his own army and says, "Sorry, boys, this is staying in Egypt." Insane? Maybe. Brilliant? Absolutely. In the ancient world, controlling a king's body wasn't just symbolic. It was political dynamite. Whoever had Alexander's remains owned his legacy. Ptolemy didn't just declare himself pharaoh. He made himself the guardian of the greatest conqueror ever. He built a tomb for Alexander right in the heart of Alexandria, turning it into a pilgrimage site. Want to pay respects to the man who conquered the world? You had to come to Egypt. You had to bow to Ptolemy. But Ptolemy wasn't just playing grave robber. He had a vision to rule Egypt long term. He couldn't just be another Macedonian warlord. He had to become something more. a pharaoh who was both Egyptian and Greek. This guy was a cultural chameleon. He wore Egyptian ceremonial robes, but spoke Greek in court. He prayed to Egyptian gods like Ammonius and Isis, but invited Greek philosophers to his palace. He turned Alexandria into the Manhattan of the ancient world. Cosmopolitan, wealthy, and impossibly cool. Imagine the great library stuffed with every scroll of knowledge from India to Spain. Picture the lighthouse of Alexandria, one of the seven wonders, guiding ships loaded with silk, spices, and gold. Merchants from 3 continents flooded the harbor, trading everything from papyrus to elephants. Ptolemy created a hybrid civilization, Greek in culture, Egyptian in religion, global in ambition, and it worked like a charm. For 40 years, Ptolemy transformed Egypt from a province of Alexander's empire into an independent superpower. His wealth dwarfed every other king on earth. His army was the strongest in the Mediterranean. His city was the most civilized place on the planet. But there was one problem he hadn't cracked. Who would inherit this masterpiece? See, Ptolemy had multiple sons from different wives. And history tells us that's a recipe for disaster. Brothers killing brothers, generals picking sides, empires torn apart by succession disputes. It's practically a cliché. Ptolemy needed a way to keep power concentrated, to ensure no one could challenge his family's grip on Egypt. And that's when he came up with an idea that seemed genius at the time, but would haunt his dynasty for centuries. He decided his heirs should marry within the family. Not cousins, not distant relatives, siblings. Now, before you gag, let's put this in context. In ancient Egypt, sibling marriage wasn't entirely new. The old pharaohs sometimes married their sisters to keep the bloodline divine, to mimic the gods like Osiris and Isis. But Ptolemy took it to another level. He didn't just suggest it. He made it policy. His son, Ptolemy II, would marry his sister, Arsinoe II, and set the tone for the next 250 years. This wasn't about love or lust. It was about power. Marrying your sister meant no foreign in-laws stirring up trouble, no divided loyalties, no outsiders diluting the family brand. It was a political masterstroke, or so they thought. Because what Ptolemy couldn't see was that this solution, designed to protect his dynasty, would plant the seeds of its destruction. It's 275 BCE now, and Ptolemy II, known to history as Ptolemy the sister lover, yep, that's his nickname, is facing a crisis. He's already married to a princess named Arsinoe to secure a military alliance, but it's backfiring. Her family's meddling in Egyptian politics, and their kids could have split loyalties. Enter his sister, Arsinoe II, a woman who's no stranger to power. She's already been queen of Thrace, knows the game of ruling, and has connections across the Mediterranean. Most importantly, she's 100% loyal to Egypt. The decision is made. Divorce the foreign wife, marry the sister. Sounds gross to us, but to them, it was a power move. Arsinoe II wasn't just a wife. She was a co-ruler. Her face appeared on coins next to her brother's. She made military decisions, controlled diplomacy, and turned Egypt into a powerhouse. Together, they created what historians call the Jewel Monarchy. 2 rulers acting as one, unstoppable and unchallengeable. Their reign was a golden age. The economy boomed, culture thrived, and Alexandria became the Paris of the ancient world. Temples were built, festivals were held, and when Arsinoe II died, the people mourned her like a goddess. The formula seemed bulletproof. Sibling marriage equaled stability, equaled prosperity. But here's the catch. Their success wasn't because they were siblings. It was because they were exceptional. Arsinoe II was one of the most capable women in ancient history, and Ptolemy II was a strategic genius who understood both Greek and Egyptian worlds. Their marriage worked because of who they were, not because of the family tree. Future generations, though, didn't get the memo. They saw the sibling marriage, not the talent, as the secret sauce. And that mistake would cost them everything. Let's talk about what happens when you keep shuffling the same genetic deck. Imagine your gene pool as a deck of cards. Marrying outside the family adds new cards, fresh traits, new strengths. Marrying your sibling? You're just reshuffling the same deck. First generation, you might get lucky. Second generation, still okay. But by the third, fourth, fifth generation, the deck's getting thin. Bad cards, genetic defects, health issues start showing up more often. Good combinations get rarer. In the short term, sibling marriage gave the Ptolemies control. No foreign interference, no power sharing. But in the long term, it was a genetic time bomb, ticking louder with every generation. And it wasn't just genetics. The Ptolemies' obsession with keeping power in the family made them lose touch with their people. Egyptian peasants started seeing their rulers as foreign overlords who wouldn't even marry Egyptians. Meanwhile, a new player was rising in the West, Rome. While Egypt doubled down on isolation, Rome was expanding, conquering, and getting stronger. The Ptolemies were so busy marrying their sisters they didn't notice the storm clouds gathering. But before we get to the collapse, and trust me, it's a doozy, there's one pharaoh who showed it didn't have to be this way. Ptolemy III, known as the Conqueror, did something radical. He married outside the family. His wife, Berenice II from Cyrene, brought fresh blood and new alliances. The result? The greatest era in Ptolemaic history. Ptolemy III expanded the empire from Libya to Syria. His navy ruled the Mediterranean. And Alexandria's great library hit its peak, hosting geniuses like Archimedes. Egypt became so rich it rivaled Rome itself. The irony is brutal. The non-incestuous generation created the dynasty's high point. Their kids were healthy, smart, and ambitious. No genetic baggage, no psychological drama. It was proof that diversity, not purity, breeds strength. But here's the tragedy of human nature. We learn from failure, not success. Instead of following Ptolemy III's example, the next generation looked back to Ptolemy II's sibling marriage and thought, that's the safe bet. Fear of losing control trumped evidence of greatness. Paranoia beat pragmatism. The Ptolemaic dynasty is about to take a nosedive into chaos. It's going to be a wild, twisted ride. It's the 3rd century BC, and the Ptolemies have been riding high on their sibling marriage strategy, thinking it's the key to keeping their empire unbreakable. But the cracks are starting to show. And what's coming next is a masterclass in how to tank a superpower through bad decisions, genetic mishaps, and some seriously dysfunctional family dynamics. We're in 220 BCE, and Alexandria is hosting another royal wedding. The crowds are cheering, the incense is burning, but something feels off. Ptolemy IV marries his sister, Arsinoe III, following the family tradition. But unlike his grandfather Ptolemy II, who ruled with charisma and brains, or his father Ptolemy III, who conquered half the Mediterranean, Ptolemy IV is, well, let's just say he's more interested in his mirror than his empire. History calls him Ptolemy the Weakling, and the nickname fits like a glove. This guy spends hours on personal grooming, throws lavish parties while enemies circle, and leaves the actual governing to his advisors. Arsinoe III, who could have been a powerhouse like her namesake Arsinoe II, is reduced to a figurehead, existing only to produce heirs. For the first time, we see what geneticists call inbreeding depression creeping in. Rulers who lack the spark, the drive, the strength of their ancestors. The genetic time bomb we talked about is ticking louder now. Ptolemy IV doesn't have his grandfather's strategic genius or his father's ambition. He's obsessed with luxury, not leadership. When Antiochus III of the Seleucid Empire invades Syria and Palestine, territories Egypt has controlled for generations, Ptolemy IV panics. The Battle of Raphia in 217 BCE should have been a slam dunk for Egypt. They had more troops, better equipment, and home field advantage. But weak leadership and poor coordination turned it into a messy, barely won fight. Ptolemy IV stumbles to victory, but it's the kind of win that feels like a loss. Worse, the cracks aren't just at the top. Egyptian peasants, who've spent generations under foreign rulers who won't even marry their own people, are getting restless. For the first time in a century, native Egyptians rebel, questioning the Ptolemies' legitimacy. Ptolemy IV's response? More parties, more luxury, more hiding in his palace. The guy's so out of touch he might as well be living on another planet. Maybe from genetic issues, and leaves behind an empire that's noticeably weaker. His reign sets a dangerous precedent. Weak rulers produce even weaker heirs. The genetic deck is running out of good cards, and the empire is starting to wobble. But if you think one bad pharaoh is rough, buckle up. The richest empire in the world is now led by a kindergartner. The Regency Council tries to keep things together, but it's like putting a Band-Aid on a sinking ship. The Kid King manages to hold the kingdom together, but there's a catch. This marriage marks the start of a new problem: dependency on foreign powers. Rome is rising fast, and they're starting to notice Egypt's wealth. Roman merchants flood Alexandria's markets. Roman advisors show up at court. Roman legions help protect Egypt's borders. It looks like a partnership, but it's a trap. Ptolemy V thinks he's using Rome to prop up his rule, but Rome's playing the long game. Every favor comes with strings. Every loan has conditions. Every military intervention pulls Egypt deeper into Rome's orbit. When Ptolemy V dies, possibly poisoned, possibly just worn out by genetic weaknesses, he leaves behind a kingdom that's stable but no longer truly independent. Egypt's still rich, still prestigious, but it started to feel like Rome's piggy bank. The Ptolemaic dynasty has hit a tipping point. The genetic damage from inbreeding is making rulers weaker. The political damage from isolation is making the empire vulnerable, and the growing reliance on Rome is turning Egypt into a client state. But the Ptolemies? They're still convinced sibling marriage is the answer. They're so focused on keeping power in the family, they don't see the bigger picture. Rome's not just a friend, they're a predator, waiting for Egypt to implode. And implode it will, because the next chapter of this story is where things go from bad to batshit crazy. We're talking about Ptolemy VIII. A guy will call Ptolemy the greedy man because, well, he earns it. This dude takes the family tradition of sibling marriage and cranks it up to a level that's almost unbelievable. First, he marries his sister, Cleopatra II. Standard Ptolemaic move, nothing new. They have kids, including a daughter named Cleopatra III. So far, so weird but manageable. Then, Ptolemy VIII decides to divorce his sister and marry her daughter, his niece, Cleopatra III. Let that sink in. He marries the daughter of his own sister. This isn't just incest. It's a soap opera from hell. Cleopatra II, the mother, isn't about to sit quietly while her brother husband trades her in for her own kid. She declares war, literal war, against Ptolemy VIII and Cleopatra III. Imagine the family dinner. Mother and daughter, both married to the same guy, both claiming to be the rightful queen. Alexandria splits into factions. Some back the mother, some back the daughter, and Ptolemy VIII just flip-flops between them, depending on who's winning. and the economy tanks. Egypt, the richest kingdom on earth, is starting to look like a failed state. And here's the most insane part. Even during this civil war, both sides keep up the sibling marriage tradition. Cleopatra too forces her son to marry his sister. Cleopatra III plans to marry her son to her daughter. The dysfunction is so baked into the system that even as the empire burns, they can't imagine doing things differently. Meanwhile, Rome's watching this chaos like it's the best reality show ever. Roman senators get reports from Alexandria. The pharaoh married his niece. Now his sister's fighting her own daughter. Oh, and 3 people are claiming to be ruler at the same time. They must have thought they were reading a script for a tragedy. But this was real life, and it was only going to get worse. The civil war rages for decades. Not months, decades. By the end, Egypt's a shadow of its former self. The economy's in ruins, the population's decimated, and the Ptolemies' reputation is shot. Rome doesn't even need to conquer Egypt. They just have to wait for the family to destroy itself. The genetic time bomb is no longer ticking, it's exploding. The rulers are so psychologically damaged, so isolated from reality that they can't function. And yet, the survivors learn all the wrong lessons. Instead of ditching the sibling marriage strategy, they decide to double down, marrying even closer within the family to prevent more conflicts. Spoiler alert, it doesn't work. By now, Egypt's no longer a superpower. It's a wealthy, dysfunctional mess that Rome has to babysit. The Ptolemies still have their gold, their palaces, their fancy titles, but every decision they make needs Roman approval. The age of Egyptian independence is over. The Ptolemaic dynasty has been limping along, weakened by generations of inbreeding and political disasters. The latest pharaoh, Ptolemy XII, has just died, leaving the throne to his 18-year-old daughter, Cleopatra VII, and her 10-year-old brother, Ptolemy XIII. Yes, you guessed it, they're married. Following tradition, the most famous woman in history starts her reign hitched to her preteen brother. But from the jump, Cleopatra proves she's cut from a different cloth. Unlike her predecessors, who lived in a Greek-speaking bubble, she does something revolutionary. She learns Egyptian. Sounds simple, but it's huge. For 3 centuries, the Ptolemies ruled Egypt without bothering to speak the language of their subjects. Cleopatra changes that. She talks to Egyptian peasants, priests, and merchants in their own tongue, understanding their needs, their loyalties, their frustrations. It's not just symbolic, it's a game changer. Cleopatra is not just a linguist. She's a geopolitical genius. While her ancestors were busy fighting over who got to marry which sibling, she's studying the bigger picture. Rome's no longer just a helpful ally. It's the dominant power in the Mediterranean. And Egypt's survival depends on navigating that relationship carefully. Cleopatra knows Egypt can't stand alone anymore. It needs to be a partner, not a pawn. Most Ptolemaic rulers would have played the same old game. More family drama, more inbreeding, more isolation. Not Cleopatra. She goes big. Enter Julius Caesar, Rome's most powerful general, who arrives in Alexandria in 48 BCE, chasing his rival, Pompey. Cleopatra doesn't wait for an invitation. Legend says she has herself smuggled into the palace, rolled up in a carpet, to meet Caesar face to face. Whether the carpet story's true or not, the message is clear. This woman doesn't sit back and react. She makes things happen. Her relationship with Caesar isn't just romantic. It's a strategic masterstroke. With Caesar's backing, she crushes her brother's rebellion, consolidates power, and gains access to Roman military tech and political know-how. Their son, Caesar Ion, is more than a love child. He's a symbol of a new kind of alliance, half Roman, half Egyptian, breaking the Ptolemaic tradition of pure bloodlines. But then, in 44 BCE, Caesar's assassinated, and Cleopatra's plans hit a snag. Rome's plunging into its own civil war, and she needs a new ally. Enter Mark Antony, the guy controlling the eastern half of the Roman world. Again, this isn't just a love story, it's a power play. Antony's got the legions, Cleopatra's got the gold. Together. And Ptolemy Philadelphus. Names that scream ambition, mixing Egyptian, Greek, and Roman identities. For a decade, it looks like Cleopatra's vision might actually work. Egypt prospers under Roman protection. The alliance controls vast territories. Cleopatra and Antony style themselves as divine rulers, Isis and Dionysus, uniting the East under a shared dream. But there's a problem. Octavian, the guy running Western Rome, he's not about to let a rival power center rise. The Battle of Actium in 31 BCE isn't just a naval clash. It's a showdown between two visions of the future. Octavian's centralized, Roman-dominated empire versus Cleopatra's multicultural, Hellenistic dream. Cleopatra and Antony lose, and it's game over. But even in defeat, Cleopatra doesn't go quietly. When Octavian invades Egypt, she refuses to be paraded through Rome as a trophy. Instead, she chooses suicide, possibly by snakebite, dressed as Isis, asserting her divine status to the very end. With her death in 30 BCE, the Ptolemaic dynasty ends. Caesarion is murdered. She spoke 9 languages, negotiated with the best, commanded armies, and kept Egypt's economy humming. How? Because genetics isn't destiny. Her environment, her education, her exposure to the world mattered more. She succeeded not because she was a pure Ptolemy, but because she embraced the outside world. She learned Egyptian, allied with Romans, and leaned into cultural fusion. Her predecessors failed because they were stuck strategically and genetically in a cycle of isolation. Cleopatra broke that cycle, or at least she tried. So, was Cleopatra a hero or a villain? The Romans painted her as a seductress who corrupted their generals. Modern pop culture calls her a feminist icon fighting the patriarchy. The truth? She was a pragmatist, ruthless when she needed to be. She had siblings killed, manipulated powerful men, and claimed divine status. But she also preserved Egypt's independence for an extra generation, kept Alexandria as a cultural beacon, and made sure the world remembered her name. If she'd won at Actium, we might talk about the Ptolemies as innovators who survived Rome's rise. Not a decadent dynasty that imploded. History's written by the winners, and Octavian won, so the narrative's his. The Ptolemaic story isn't just about incest or family drama. It's about what happens when you cling to a strategy that stops working. The sibling marriage trick gave them stability in 275 BCE, but by 50 BCE, it was a straitjacket. Cleopatra saw the need for change, but she was born too late, fighting against centuries of accumulated damage. Her story's a reminder that even in the most messed up systems, one extraordinary person can almost rewrite the ending. From the brilliance of Ptolemy, to the chaos of civil wars and the legend of Cleopatra, the Ptolemaic dynasty is a roller coaster of ambition, dysfunction, and lessons that hit just as hard today as they did 2,000 years ago. What does it all mean? The Ptolemies ruled the richest kingdom in the ancient world for 275 years, built Alexandria into a cultural supernova, and then watched it all crumble because of their obsession with keeping power in the family. Ptolemy I kicked things off in 323 BCE with a stroke of genius. Steal Alexander's body, claim Egypt, and blend Greek and Egyptian cultures into a hybrid superpower. His vision made Egypt rich, defensible, and the envy of the world. His son, Ptolemy II, took it further by marrying his sister, Arsinoe II, creating a dual monarchy that locked power in the family and fueled a golden age. But that same strategy, sibling marriage, became a trap. By the time we get to Ptolemy IV, the weakling, the genetic toll of inbreeding is showing. Rulers too frail to lead, too out of touch to govern. Civil wars erupt, with family members like Ptolemy VIII marrying both sisters and nieces, turning Alexandria into a battleground. The great library burns, the economy tanks, and Rome creeps in, turning Egypt from a partner to a puppet. Then comes Cleopatra VII, who somehow defies the odds. Born from centuries of inbreeding, she's a linguistic genius, a master strategist, and a cultural chameleon. She learns Egyptian, allies with Rome's biggest players, Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, and tries to reinvent Egypt as a multicultural powerhouse. For nearly 20 years, she keeps Egypt afloat, but the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE seals her fate. Octavian's victory turns Egypt into a Roman province, and the Ptolemaic experiment ends in 30 BCE with Cleopatra's death. But her story isn't just about failure. It's about what's possible when someone refuses to be defined by their circumstances. So what went wrong? The Ptolemies' biggest mistake wasn't just inbreeding. It was insularity. They thought keeping power in the family would protect them, but it cut them off from the world. Genetically, sibling marriage shrank their gene pool, producing weaker rulers over time. Politically, it alienated their Egyptian subjects, who saw them as foreign overlords. Strategically, it blinded them to the rise of Rome, a power that thrived by absorbing diversity while the Ptolemies clung to purity. Rome's empire was a melting pot. Conquered warriors became Roman soldiers. Defeated philosophers became Roman teachers. The Ptolemies, meanwhile, built walls around their bloodline and their culture, and those walls became their prison. Cleopatra tried to break those walls. She spoke Egyptian, embraced Roman alliances, and raised kids with mixed Roman-Egyptian heritage. She understood that survival meant adaptation, not isolation. But she was fighting against 250 years of entrenched habits. The Ptolemies' early success, Ptolemy I's cultural synthesis, Ptolemy III's outside marriage, came from engaging with the world. Their downfall came from rejecting it. By the time Cleopatra took the throne, Egypt was still rich, still cultured, but it was also fragmented and dependent on Rome. She almost turned it around, but Rome's machine of diversity and efficiency was too strong. The Ptolemy story isn't just ancient gossip. It's a warning about the dangers of insularity. Look around. Corporate dynasties hire family members over qualified outsiders, creating echo chambers where bad ideas go unchallenged. Political families, think Kennedys, Bushes, or Clintons, can fall into the same trap, prioritizing loyalty over fresh perspectives. Even tech billionaires build private schools and exclusive circles, shielding themselves from the broader world. The result? Decisions based on internal politics, not external reality. The Ptolemies thought they were preserving strength by keeping it in the family. They were actually creating vulnerability. This isn't just about genetics, it's about mindset. When you only listen to people who agree with you, you miss the bigger picture. When you only hire those who look like you lose innovation. When you cling to tradition over adaptation, you risk irrelevance. The Ptolemies started as cultural synthesizers, blending Greek, Egyptian, and Macedonian ideas. They ended as prisoners of their own bloodline, rejecting everything but their narrow vision. Cleopatra showed another way, embracing diversity, learning from others, adapting to change. But she couldn't undo centuries of damage alone. Real strength comes from connection, not isolation. Real power comes from diversity, not purity. Real survival comes from adapting, not doubling down on what worked yesterday. In our connected, complex, ever-changing world, that lesson's more relevant than ever. Organizations, governments, even individuals who build walls, whether genetic, cultural, or ideological, are walking the Ptolemaic path to obsolescence. The Ptolemies weren't evil or stupid. They were smart people making rational choices based on what they knew. They wanted to protect their culture, their power, their legacy. But they confused preservation with isolation, purity with strength, tradition with wisdom. Cleopatra proved it didn't have to end that way. Her intelligence, her adaptability, her willingness to engage with the world showed what was possible. She didn't just fight for Egypt. She fought for a vision of a connected, diverse future. She lost, but her legacy endures, not as a footnote, but as a reminder that even in the most dysfunctional systems, one person can change the story. The Ptolemies ruled for 275 years because they started by embracing the best of multiple worlds. They fell because they ended by rejecting everything but their own. So what's the final word? The Ptolemies built an empire, destroyed it, and left us lessons we're still grappling with today. Power corrupts, but isolation corrupts absolutely. Don't let it be your story. Drop a comment below. Could Cleopatra have saved the Ptolemaic dynasty if she'd had more time? Or was their fate sealed by centuries of bad choices? If this deep dive into ancient power, corruption, and survival got your brain buzzing, smash that subscribe button and join us for more wild rides through the dark corners of history on WTF History. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.